5 days later, the Watts district of Los Angeles erupted in the worst race riots in the city's history. National attention was riveted on the streets of LA. But the riots there were simply manifestations of the racial tension and rage that simmered in every major U.S. city during the period.
Is it too much to ask you to grant us human dignity? Should we be put down and shot to death for this request? If so, you can aim your gun. What the hell do you think we care about dying if you're going to deny us the right to live?
Poverty, unemployment, police harassment, unfulfilled expectations had created a tinderbox on the streets of inner-city ghettos. The civil rights movement had dismantled the Southern system of segregation and white supremacy, but it had largely ignored the insidious racism that festered elsewhere. Northern blacks were angry, disaffected, and easily seduced by fringe groups.
They call Mr. Muhammad a hate teacher because he makes you hate dope and alcohol.
Malcolm X had emerged in the early 1960s as a radical alternative to Martin Luther King and nonviolence, which he called the philosophy of the fool.
Condemning the racist practices.
As the chief spokesman for a black nationalist group called the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X espoused self-reliance and separatism rather than integration. To his admirers, he was a courageous advocate for black rights. But for many others, he symbolized reverse racism, black supremacy, and violence.
In a vicious cycle of poverty, of ignorance, of apathy, of disease, and of death. And they have these old Uncle Tom Negro leaders coming to Harlem telling you and me that times are getting better. Your times will never get better until you make them better.
During his lifetime, Malcolm X did not achieve the notoriety of figures like King, but he was assassinated in 1965, and in death became a near-mythic figure. His revolutionary rhetoric infected many civil rights veterans, especially within the core of SNCC.
You're going to sit in front of your television set and listen to LBJ tell you that violence never accomplishes anything, my fellow Americans. But you see, the real problem with violence is that we have never been violent. We have been too nonviolent.
Under the new leadership of Stokely Carmichael, SNCC assumed a militant posture beginning in 1966. The group's mantra of nonviolence was replaced by the chorus of Black Power. For Americans who were just beginning to warm to the idea of civil rights, Black Power was something altogether different. Martin Luther King considered the slogan, at best, an unfortunate choice of words. Roy Wilkins of the NAACP called it the father of hatred and the mother of violence. John Lewis feared that Black Power would divide the races and the movement. And it did. The new movement challenged the established relationship between whites and blacks. In some communities, Black Power was exercised in the voting booth. In 1967, Cleveland voters elected Carl Stokes as mayor. He was the first Negro to hold the position of chief executive of a major U.S. city. But in other parts of the country, Black Power meant bullets, not ballots. In Oakland, California, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale formed the Black Panther Party. What began as a community organization to provide free breakfasts and liberation schools to ghetto kids ultimately devolved into murder, rape, bank heists, and drug trafficking. The anarchy was not limited to California. Chicago, Newark, Minneapolis, Memphis. In scores of American cities, blacks rebelled against chronic racism and police brutality during the late 1960s. In turn, white America took up arms. Civil rights had become civil war. President Johnson's Great Society, a lawless society. By nearly any measure, the United States was immensely divided in the late 60s. Divided on civil rights, by the war in Vietnam, and by a generation gap without equal in American history. Black Power brought an end to the civil rights movement that began with the Montgomery bus boycott in 1956. But it never achieved mainstream recognition.